Okay, picture this. Your paycheck finally hits your bank account. You look at that beautiful number, and for a brief, glorious second, you actually feel rich. But then, well, life happens. Rent, groceries, endless subscriptions, maybe a couple of takeout orders. And before you even realize what's going on, that fresh, crisp paycheck has just quietly disappeared. It's a super frustrating cycle, isn't it? You stare at the empty account and literally ask yourself, where did my paycheck actually go? Now, if you go looking for traditional financial advice online, you are going to hear the exact same exhausting refrain. Just budget better. Track every single dollar. Sounds great in theory, right? But in reality, it's kind of a nightmare for most of us. The source material we're digging into for this explainer highlights a pretty brutal truth. Most people try detailed budgeting for about 3 days before just totally throwing in the towel. And honestly, who can blame them? Because tracking 40 different expense categories and stressing over every single minor purchase, it's just exhausting. It's completely unsustainable.
So, let's dive right into our first section, the 50-30-20 rule explained.
What if you genuinely didn't have to track every single penny? What if there was a system that functioned almost like an anti-budget? Under this 50-30-20 framework, your entire income just gets sliced into 3 really basic buckets. That's it. 50% goes to your needs, 30% goes to your wants, and 20% goes directly to savings and investing. Literally nothing else to it. No endless rows of spreadsheet data, no hoarding every coffee receipt, just 3 distinct, highly manageable categories. And it turns out, this really simple structure provides all the framework you actually need to gain control, completely skipping the mental fatigue of traditional budgeting.
Let's break down exactly what belongs in each of these 3 buckets, because getting this distinction right is absolutely crucial. First up, your needs. That's the 50% chunk. These are the absolute non-negotiables you must pay for just to survive. We're talking rent, your mortgage, utilities, basic groceries, and insurance. Then we have your wants, the 30%. This is the fun bucket. Restaurants, entertainment, shopping, maybe that slightly overpriced artisanal coffee you love. Things that make life genuinely enjoyable, even if they aren't strictly essential. And finally, savings, the 20%. This bucket right here is totally dedicated to building your future. So investing, padding out that emergency fund, or aggressively paying down debt. By just separating the bare essentials from the lifestyle choices, you instantly clarify your entire financial picture.
Moving right along to Section 2, the power of 20%.
You know, understanding these categories is one thing, but actually seeing the mathematical proof in action, that is where the magic really happens. Let's imagine you take home exactly $4,000 a month after taxes. 50% for needs, that's a super clean $2,000. 30% for wants, $1,200. And 20% for savings and investing, $800. Step by step, the finances just become crystal clear. There is absolutely zero guesswork involved here. You know exactly what it takes to keep a roof over your head, exactly what you can spend totally guilt-free on the fun stuff, and exactly what you are paying your future self.
But here is where we hit a pretty major roadblock for most of us. When you look at your own spending, it probably doesn't look quite that neat. We always assume our biggest financial drains are the major expenses, right? Like rent or those massive grocery hauls. But research from the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually reveals something totally different. It's the discretionary spending, our wants category that quietly drains our income. It's this invisible sabotage. A $15 lunch today, a $20 subscription you forgot about tomorrow, maybe a $30 food delivery on a lazy Tuesday night. Individually, they feel tiny, barely register. But you string a few of those together every single week, and suddenly, you are bleeding hundreds of dollars without even noticing.
Now, what happens when you finally plug those little leaks and capture that final 20% bucket? $450,000. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. Going back to our $4,000 a month example, that 20% savings bucket was $800 a month. If you consistently invest that $800 every month, assuming an average return of 8% a year, after 20 years, it literally grows to roughly $450,000. And that wealth, it isn't created by hitting some jackpot or timing the stock market perfectly. No way. It is created simply by having a consistent structure that captures your money before it just slips away into endless $15 lunches.
And this actually brings us to a really profound realization from the source material. Financial failure is rarely caused by making terrible, disastrous investments. People don't usually go broke just because they picked the wrong mutual fund. They fail because they never create the space in their budget to invest in the first place. You absolutely do not need to win the lottery to build lasting wealth. You just need a structural framework that protects a portion of your income and forces it to work for you.
Okay, next up, Section 3, the psychology of spending.
I think the most fascinating discovery from this source material isn't actually the math. It's the psychological relief. Because sure, the numbers make sense on paper, but it's the structure itself that actually gets people to stick with it. Think about it. Most people treat their money like a notoriously messy closet. You know exactly the one I'm talking about. Everything, rent, shoes, groceries, your so-called emergency fund, just gets shoved inside randomly like a giant junk drawer. It's total financial chaos. And it leads to this constant guilt every time you buy something because you have literally no idea if you can actually afford it. The 50-30-20 rule, though, gives you 3 really simple, organized shelves. Needs on one shelf, wants on another, savings up on top. Suddenly, everything has a designated place. You move from chaotic, guilt-ridden spending to a calm, organized framework. If you buy a pair of shoes from your wants shelf, 0 guilt, because, hey, it was already planned for.
Which leads us perfectly to this incredible insight from the text. When financial decisions become clear, behavior improves automatically. This right here is the absolute secret weapon of the 50-30-20 rule. You don't actually need ironclad monk-like discipline to stop overspending. Just by being aware that you only have a set 30% for your wants, your brain naturally starts filtering out those mindless purchases. You start pausing and asking yourself, do I really want this $20 subscription, or do I want to save that cash for a nice dinner out this weekend? The structure itself does all the heavy lifting for you.
Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Hey, I live in New York or London or San Francisco, and my rent alone eats up way more than 50% of my paycheck. If that's you, please don't panic. The source text makes it explicitly clear that the 50-30-20 rule is a guideline. It's not some rigid law. The whole goal here is balance, not perfection. If housing is sky high where you live, maybe your ratio needs to be 60-20-20. 60% for needs, 20 for wants, 20 for savings. And you know what? That is perfectly fine. Adjusting the rule to actually fit your reality is incredibly smart, because having a slightly modified structure is 1,000 times better than having absolutely no structure at all.
So, let's wrap this up with Section 4, your 30-day financial challenge.
So, the crucial point is, knowing all this math and psychology means absolutely nothing if we don't take action. So, here is a simple 30-day experiment for you, laid out in 3 super easy steps. Step 1, calculate your actual monthly take-home income. Step 2, multiply that number to divide it into your 3 50-30-20 categories. And step 3, just track your spending against those 3 specific buckets for the next 30 days. You really don't need to be perfect with it. You just need to observe. The author of the source material, Jack, did this exact 30-day experiment himself, and he found that his financial awareness absolutely skyrocketed. Saving became basically automatic, and his stress over money practically vanished. I promise you, the resulting awareness you get from just these 3 steps will completely change how you view your financial life.
Which brings us to a final thought, and a question I really want to leave you with today. When that very next paycheck hits your banking app, are you going to just keep guessing and hoping it all somehow works out? Or will you start deciding exactly where your money goes? The biggest financial mistake isn't necessarily overspending. It's operating without any clear structure. Give your money a shelf to sit on, and just watch how quickly you take intentional control of your future.